You know what? Do you see with the Chinese, everyone's talking about the Chinese and everyone's talking about, but I think people need to look at the British, especially when it comes to black people, to Chinese people. Chinese people, they were battered by the British. When it's come into this country, they're asking me to stand outside my house and clap for the NHS. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why? Because have you noticed, right? In this COVID thing in this country, black people, in all the media representation of it, black people should be at the forefront. You go into any hospital, any A&E, the nurses are usually West Indian, African, Filipino. Filipino.
Yeah.
This is where they're from, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just don't get it. The British seem to escape. They even convince black people and Asian people as well that you yourself are the enemy. They will say to you, China, you can't say anything in China. Everything is, the press is controlled and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you ever read the Daily Mail? If you see,
completely.
I'm not defending the Chinese government. I can't, because the Chinese government is guilty of war crimes, genocide, a lot. But the British are doing exactly the same thing.
Completely.
It's
completely.
power.
And they're very good at being on the outside, kind of just watching.
Hold up though. They're not on the outside watching. They are right up in it.
My mum's a nurse. So
my mum was a nurse.
And it was very upsetting for her, someone that's been in the NHS for all my life, to see how it's almost like a slap in the face for the newspapers to keep kind of, it's almost like they're rewriting history in real time. Mm-hmm. Because then when we look back in a couple of years' time, when the kids are in school learning about COVID-19, and then so who were the front lines, and then the newspaper cuttings and all the books that have been written, all they're going to see is white faces. And again, the black children or the people of colour at that point in time will be like, oh, we didn't do anything. The white people saved us.
I mean, Junior Yashir called it out. The comedian called it out.
Yes.
Clean.
Yes.
Right? And it's been really interesting because she called that out, and then almost immediately the next thing was, oh, black people are getting lots of COVID. And I feel like there's some sort of weird correlation between the two. I don't know what that correlation is. It makes no sense. But that is definitely where it seems to have jumped from. So instead of black people's, brown people being the saviours in this situation, suddenly they're being seen as the carriers.
Yeah. Almost kind of gearing it towards a genetic thing. So they'll be saying how like, black people have an increase of diabetes, they have an increase of blood pressure, their diet's bad, but no one's actually taken the time out to understand the socio-economic situation in which a lot of black people face themselves. If you put a white person in the same socio-economic situation, they'll be going through the same health issues. It's got nothing to do with race. It's about economics.
They know that actually being black or white doesn't really make that much of an odds. The people that we have to be frightened of are the eugenicists, who are in both UK and US government. They're the ones that's pushing it. And then you've also got a media who would like to just jump on any kind of story to do with race, because at least then they've got a scapegoat. From the 16th until maybe around the 21st, there were all kinds of news stories. There was whole kind of Labour report that came out where it was very clear the amount of racism that Diane Abbott, Clive Lewis, David Lammy, Dawn Butler were getting. But the big news was anti-Semitism. There was a whole thing about education happening in this country, because what's happened because of COVID is the teachers are now marking the work of the students, but we already know for a fact that black kids are going to be marked down.
Yeah, of course.
And no one's talking about that, right? There was reports in the Nursing Times that black people, particularly black people, felt that they were being pressurized to go to the front line over their white counterparts.
My mum's a nurse. Then that's
right.
Yes.
Right. So that was a big thing in the nursing times. And then very suddenly, and it feels like it was around the same time as it was happening in the US, suddenly there was this story about initially BAME people disproportionately being affected by COVID. Over the last day and a half, suddenly it's Black people, and in particular Black Caribbean. So it's gone through this whole thing. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, but wait a minute, I've been collecting these stories and the stories have been all over the place, and very suddenly, bam, we're right in it. We're right in this thing.
They started in China, then Africans are being mistreated, then Black people are seen as being disproportionately affected by COVID.
And then they're going to test it
on Africans. What is going on?
Well, wait a minute. There was a Times report that came out, I believe it came out on Friday, where they actually put, they did this whole, pardon?
It's the chart.
Yes.
The chart. And then the Caribbean's at the top.
That's right.
Yeah.
Caribbeans, Africans, other Black people, then it goes down and it goes down and it goes down. But you kind of go, well, hold up a second. Because back at the beginning of March, this was the greatest threat to all of humanity. Now suddenly it's the greatest threat to just a tiny group of people.
That's what I'm
based
saying.
on nothing. And it's all based, it is literally at this moment all based on the fact that the first 50 odd health professionals were of colour. And then they're looking at that in proportion to the amount of population. Now, if you're not looking for ethnicity, which they wasn't doing, and Public Health England actually said this, we don't have it on the death certificates. What we'll have is cause of death and things like that, but nothing else. So where is this coming from? Very suddenly it came into that. So it's a whole process that actually happened. Yeah. And in the middle of it was the one thing that we all seem to have left out, which was it has struck Europe in ways that actually was really quite next level. Like, they could have just taken the example of Wuhan and Singapore and places like that. People here just didn't do that in Europe. What they did was they went, oh, it's in China. I don't need to worry about that. It's in China. Or, oh, it's in Italy. I don't need to worry about that. Because that's what it was. It was complacency on a major scale. It was the two Italian people that took COVID-19 to the African continent.
Yeah.
Two of them, right? And nobody's saying anything about that. Nobody's talking about. And actually, there was. I need to find it. I couldn't find it. I was really upset. There was one of the most racist reports I think I've ever seen in my life, right? Where it was basically kind of going, oh, this is weird. Africa doesn't have any COVID. Is it only going to be a matter of time because they're disgusting? It kind of went off on this tangent, and it didn't even talk about the two Italian people that took COVID there. And there was a whole thing. It's like, ooh, what are they doing? We don't know what they're doing. Now it's beginning to take hold.
They're happy. It was almost like, why isn't it spreading in Africa?
That's right.
It was like, oh, they've only got two cases. Why? Not,
That's right.
Well, what are they doing right? Or it was almost like they wanted it to devastate Africa.
They did. We are seen as service providers next to whiteness.
Yeah.
Right. So we will service what whiteness needs. And at this moment, whiteness needs a scapegoat.
In the NHS. I saw something about percentages and whatnot, but the people that are on floor patients are the Black, Asian
It's totally true.
peoples. And as you go up, so you'll get them in their offices sending emails. Yes, you work for the NHS, but
this is the problem. Yeah. It's like the decision makers and sort of, they're always the white people, and then everybody else is on the bottom. And that is the reason why it's dying the way.
Even the white NHS workers that are dying are the working class white nurses. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
So it's very interesting. Throughout this period, the same people that were being kicked out last year they're now calling them to say, "Oh, can you come back to work?"
That's right.
For the NHS. The people that they were trying to say, they've also extended people's visa stays and all of that
for the Europeans.
So it's almost like you can stay here if you die for us. Black people, black bodies are they're the worker bees. They're only here to work, to be used, however. And that's the conditions that I feel like it's been revealed within this whole COVID process as well. It's almost like last year you were kicking out all the Caribbean people. You were sending them back. You were saying that they weren't citizens. They've been paying tax for however many years, working for the NHS, and you were kicking them out and kicking all the children of, the Windrush generation, you were kicking them out. And then all of a sudden you're saying, ringing them up and saying, can you come back and work for the NHS? Mm-hmm. Or you were trying to kick them out. So, it's sad because it does feel like black people are only to be used and abused.
Talking to a friend of mine the other day, said, I reckon part of the reason why it's starting to go towards black people now having COVID, at a greater risk of COVID, is because of the vaccination trials. And I was like, oh no. Yeah. I mean, my heart sunk, right? There may well be a correlation, there may well not be. I don't know, but I just find it interesting how the whole conversation has, in a matter of 2 weeks, gone from it's in China and and now suddenly it's in this country, but it's Caribbean people.